Kyle.
What up?
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time today and coming here and, setting everything up and joining me on this endeavor of the Visionary Art Podcast.
You're welcome. I'm really glad to be here.
Kyle, how would you describe yourself to someone who you've just met and they're like, what do you do? What would you tell them?
I am a visionary artist and sound designer, DJ, based in Nashville, and how would I describe myself? I describe myself as a weird, shape-shifty, foxy wizard boy, party boy, nature-loving nerd. Basically, I think would be the best description for me if someone had only just met me or never met me. So, but yeah, well, that's probably how I do it. A creative, magic weirdo. In other words, yeah.
Cool. That's how I would describe you as well. I'm going to take that exact text and put it in the description.
Yeah, please do. That's definitely how I want to represent myself in this community and this world. So I'm pleased to be here.
Kyle, how long have we been friends?
How long have we been friends?
I remember meeting you at one of the Fractal Tribe warehouse parties in 2011 or something. It might have been the 11/11 party.
I feel like it was, and I definitely remember the same thing. From what I remember, and this might not be entirely correct because I have a lot of weird party misadventures in my past life memories of the ancient storage system of the brain. But what I remember is that we were both coming from opposite rooms at this warehouse party, going into this nice outside space they have where everyone kind of goes to decompress and chill and talk for a second. And we both burst through the doors from one spot of bumping music and another spot of bumping music and coming from opposite directions. And I remember pretty clearly that we both had handfuls of fruit. I had some dried mango and pineapple and stuff that I was just offering to everyone. And you had, I think, apples and oranges or bananas or something. And we were both just walking through this space offering people free fruit at this event. And we met in the middle and looked at each other and we just smiled really big and just hugged each other immediately. And that's how we became friends. I mean, that's what I remember. It could be a fantasy, but
yeah. What I remember from that evening is we started talking about it was something mystical or something, and I remember you took out this sack and you were like, you want one? And I was what? It was this really nice looking velvet sack. I wasn't sure what was about to come out of it. And you told me to reach inside and take something. And I was literally just met you. And I'm like, okay. And I reached in and pulled out this really beautiful carnelian stone, and I still have that somewhere. And then I remember we just kind of were homies after that.
Yeah, that's such an interesting and kind of freaking weird thing to do. And hey strangers, you want to reach into my pouch of mysteries? You don't know what's gonna be in there. It could be something really weird or sketchy. It's just a beautiful gem. We're here, it's free.
Yeah, I was just oh dude, that's so nice. Who just get that? That's awesome. I was, and then I think for a couple of years at Fractal Fest we camped next to each other. We were neighbors and just shared campsite space. And we've known each other a long time. You're one of the people that I feel most comfortable being myself around, because I know that you just echo that weirdness that I put out, and then you amp it up and you're and I'm
yeah, I very much intentionally found out where you would be camping at events and came early and purposely put my stuff up where I thought you would be. Just so we could hang out more.
Yeah, we had the same campsite at Fractal Fest for like 3 years in a row or something. I think like it was that one little like corner spot where like a couple trails intersect, and it's a really good spot to like put your art because people will just stop. And like, by the way, for the people listening who go to festivals, like if you want to sell your art at a festival, bring a canopy tent and then put your art like all around it and camp next to somewhere where people are going to be walking by constantly. You will make so many friends. You will get your art seen by so many people, like the right people who are into your art. And like if you're making art at a festival, then that's just even better. Like you don't have to pay for a vendor booth. Like you can just put your art out. No one's going to stop you.
The trail roaming strange boys who pass by at 2 a.m. and see your tapestry and ask who made it. Yeah, that's a real thing that happens.
Yeah, it's a great feeling too to like see people like stopping and admiring your artwork and what you do. It's a really incredible feeling.
This is true. Well, I'm blessed to know you. I'm so happy to be here in Nashville and share space and time with you.
Yeah.
Connect in all these ways.
Yeah, so I've got 2 questions before we dive into today's theme, the episode is how to have a mystical experience. Is it a tutorial? Is it an in-depth discussion? You'll have to keep listening and find out. So, 2 questions. 1, you've been in Asheville for about a year now?
Yeah, a year.
Yeah, what's that past year been like for you? Like moving to a new place, like from New Hampshire down to North Carolina, like they're kind of different. Like what's that experience of like integrating yourself into this new environment been like?
Well, first off, it's been just a crazy major blessing, honestly, in like all aspects of my life, especially in connectivity in the art world and having a community of people here that share, similar beliefs and interests. So that was probably like the major reasons I moved here. So I'm like really happy to find out after being here that I was not illusioned to come down here. And what was it like? I mean, it's been kind of weird just because the pandemic and everything. So, like, over the last year since I've been here, I just signed a new lease, actually. So I've moved. This will be my, I think, 6th time I've moved in the last year. So I finally got a year lease in a beautiful piece of property with, like, woodland and nice positive vibe people. So I'm like finally happy to be done with that part of living here. But beyond that, honestly, that's like the only thing I could really think of that's any kind of like trouble living in Asheville. Just been mad pleasant, and it's been really, really healthy for me.
Yeah. What's like the culture down here compared to like where you came from in New Hampshire? Because Asheville's got like a flavor of people that it attracts. So I'm wondering from your, 365-day perspective, like what that's been like.
I mean, well, people in New Hampshire, where I'm from, are kind of, there's a lot of rural farm folky people. There's a lot of like blue collar workers and kind of like ritzy summer people. So coming that, it's like a big difference between when you live in like a rural community removed in a place like New Hampshire. It's really just like your close knit group of people. So like ironically similar to how it was here with COVID when I first got down here, but not as great. I mean, like being down here, it's just like such a community. So there's so many artists. I think I don't actually think a single person that I've met so far doesn't produce some sort of artwork or performance art, which is just like mind blowing. So it's like a huge comparison versus someplace like the backwoods of New Hampshire is really pretty much just, working folk and weirdos. So yeah, coming down here has been crazy, especially coming from New England, where people are kind of like a little more conservative or closed. It's like cold there and barren-ish. So
long winters.
yeah, I come down to somewhere like here. It's so warm in the south, and everyone's so inviting. So that's been like a major shift for me, like psychologically speaking. Just being in a place where you can like pretty freely and easily meet new people and really connect with them on a deep level, and actually like get their contacts and become real friends with them and do real world things with them. That has been like a major shift from what I've been used to.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things I noticed moving from New England as well. Was just like the friendliness of the people, and like because Asheville attracts such a particular flavor of people. Like it's really if you are of that flavor, then it's like a very attractive place to live, and like it's. It's crazy that you've had to move 6 times in like just a year. Like in the 5 years I've lived here, I've moved. This is the 4th house that I've lived in here, and I've gotten really lucky with in terms of like roommates and locations. Yeah, especially right now, the housing market here is just completely bananas.
Fucking bonkers.
So my second question before we really dive into things, which is kind of related, what the hell is thinking? Like, we are creating this imaginary world in our brain that we're using to articulate and like guesstimate what the real world is going to be like, and we're actively creating these things in our imagination as we think about them, these real life circumstances, and we think about them as like preparation for it, and it's this totally real thing in our minds and in our heads. We have this world, this whole universe. We can like replay a scenario like dozens of times and before it ever actually happens, or we can replay scenarios that did happen. And there is it's just strange. Like, what is going on with thinking? What is this world that all of us have in our heads that like all of us can access, but we can never actually communicate or properly articulate to like other people? Like, what's going on there, Kyle?
That is a ridiculous question. What is thinking? Like, why are you asking me this question? Shit though. What is thinking? I mean, why do we have brains that can imagine things in such great detail, but that there isn't a direct way to share them that's well known and practiced by most people? Not that there aren't ways, but damn, I don't really know. Fuck. I don't even think about that for just like 1 second. I think that like thinking is a magical manifestation, right? So thinking is like one of the first. I guess it's a mind interface for the like primary manifestations of the void. That would be like my legitimate answer. Right. So there's this magical void of which all things come, and all things are born. It would be like infinite cosmic opposite side of the Big Bang or God or something, but this is space that we reach in meditation, this void space. So then somehow things spring forth from the void. Things are created from nothing, in other words, which is a weird magical act of creation unto itself. But I think that thinking allows us as individuals to have like an interface with that void space. So when you're devoid of thought, it's the void. It's just empty space, right? So when if you're meditating really deeply and you have your eyes closed and you reach that state, so then what happens when you start to break out of that state is you start to have thoughts. So like thoughts are going to precede pretty much all actions besides immediate defensive bodily reactions or something. So I would say, yeah, it's this act of an individual to be able to kind of keep track of or have an interface with what's happening from the void into creation.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best answer I could come up with for what is thinking. That's a ridiculous question.
I was thinking about it the other day as I was coming home from the forest. I was like, what is this like? There's like this whole place in my head that like sometimes I like feel like other people are there, and I'll start like referencing something that I've been like going through a lot in my thoughts, and people are like, what are you saying? Yeah, I like your wording of it, that it's like an interface for like how we work with reality. It's this like kind of this impossible playground that each one of us is equipped with, so that we can have these thoughts of expansion and like have something tangible that's only tangible to us that we can tap into, and then go to that place and bring our physical selves like to this place like in the real world. Like, and it's because we have such a concrete idea of who and what we are that's like in our head, and then we kind of match up with that in our physical reality. Yeah. So that brings me to another of my questions. Like, what's the difference between imagination and the mystical?
I mean, that's a difficult question, right? Because the difference between imagination and the mystical. Well, you could have a mystical imagination, right? So, I guess what the difference would really be is that, yeah. Well, I think what you're trying to ask more so is like, what's the difference between some sort of imaginary event or a projected thought and an actual verifiable, what we would consider to be a mystical experience? I would say that the line there is very thin. It's very thin. So again, like, because you can think something and will it into reality, like simple acts of manifestation. So the line there is mad thin. Like, what is imaginary and what is mystical and real? Yeah, I guess I would say like what I would consider to be a more imaginary thing is something that we're not actually tangibly creating into reality. So, you could have 100 daydreams, but maybe only one or two of them are things that you're actually going to participate in crafting into this reality. Right? So
yeah,
the other ones I would say are imagination, right? But yeah, that line is very thin, and it's kind of an interesting question because it brings up like a significant sort of point, which is that it's not necessarily that you have to be unimaginative or like totally grounded in the moment to have a mystical experience. Like, there's a lot which is sort of leading into the next question, but you can have imagination about your mystical experiences, right? You can add to them, and you can use that to manifest and create something else. So or a lot of times, yeah, you can think that they're imaginations, right? Something that's not grounded in reality, but they really are, because through your thought, then they become a reality. And so you might kind of daydream about something, right? And then years or months or days later, you see it in your external environment, and you're like, what the heck just happened? That's so weird. Yeah,
because I sometimes I get these feelings of like, it's kind of like deja vu, but it's also kind of really like it feels like I'm remembering something from the future, and it's like there'll be these like little cues in there of like something that I've like seen in a dream, or that of like a thought that I've had like the whole time I've been producing this podcast, and like various elements of it. I've had like little flickers of that like deja vu-esque moment where I'm like, this feels familiar, but like familiar from the future. And like just to put it into like some of my own experiences, I've had experiences where I've encountered like personalities like out in nature. I'm referring to one really specific experience, and like in an instant, this personality was suddenly like very, very clear to me when like literally seconds ago, like I had no conception or like thought of who this person might be. And like the only way that I can really like, I guess, process it is by seeing like the mysticism of it and feeling like I encountered like some actual kind of spirit while I was like up there in the mountains. Was I just making all of this up and my imagination super active, or like did I actually like encounter this spirit or this entity that lives on the land?
So my answer is yes to both. Yeah, which is so fun, and that's part of, if we're gonna like lead into talking about having a mystical experience or living like the life of a mystic or something like that. Yeah, you need to recognize that both of those things are true. So was it just in your imagination? Yeah, who knows? Probably, maybe. Is it something that someone else could pick up on if they're in the environment? I mean, I don't really know. No one else is with you during this. Like, it's very, very possible. I've had those sorts of things happen all the time, so I wouldn't doubt it, but it's not verifiable, right? So that's why then you're like, well, is it just my imagination? So, well, first off, where are you getting these impulses from, right? It's you being in tune with your environment isn't necessarily all coming from your imagination, right? What it triggers in a response in your brain, maybe then you're getting a little lost and you're calling that imagination, but really like you're out in nature, you're in tune with your environment, you're picking up on things, and then you're elaborating on them a little bit. Like, where's the line there? No, it's both. So it's real and tangible as much as it is like a stimulus from your environment that's stimulating your brain to release chemicals to do some imaginary process, as much as it is, it's an imagination, it's a cool daydream too, because then you're taking it into your head, you're taking it into your mind space, and you're playing around with it. And like that's where then you may lose it a little bit if you think too heavily about it. So I think it's definitely both. I have a interesting experience, like, so getting like a better understanding of knowing, like deep knowing, if something is just a vibe or a feeling or a thought, and if something is real, right, in your external environment and not of your own personal daydreamy weird brainscape. It comes through, like what I've heard other people call, and like I tend to refer to as knowing. So like you could have like a fantasy, right? You're just screwing around something in your environment, like you see something and you have a little fantasy about it, right? That could be like more of an imagination. There's another thing where you could be in an environment and then you pick up on a feeling and you think to yourself, like, is what I just experienced, is that real? And should I say something like let's say like you had like a premonition of someone, right? Something like bad was going to happen or something to them. And you think to yourself, well, is this a real future event that's possible and could happen and I should warn them? Or is this just my imagination and I shouldn't say anything because it could screw up our friendship? Like, so that's where you get this divide between like knowing and not knowing, right? So when you're more confused about the process, you're not in a grounded state. You're not in a state of having like confidence in your abilities, in your your ability to see things. Something a good story about that is I've been practicing some weird practices of Buddhism, alternative practices, a lot of advanced dreaming, meditative practices, and a lot of medicine journeys and trips. And experiences. And a couple years ago, I was going through this process where I really wanted to have that confidence, right? And to really articulate more on like what we're talking about now, like knowing or not knowing, like so if I see something, is that real or is it not real? If I have a dream or a deja vu feeling, like should I lean into that, or was it just like some off weird thing? And so I kind of have like more of like a plan or like advice for that is so during this process I started just following some more of my dreams, and dream work told me I met a teacher who was a bear, shape-shifting bear man, and I saw him repeatedly in lucid dreamings, and he slowly instructed me on the specific place to go in Colorado. And for a while I was resisting, and of course obstacles that were part of my resisting slowly just got removed because I wasn't listening and paying attention, because I really want to, if you ask your heart and things, like that's an element of like knowing, like I knew I had to go and I didn't go, and then things got removed from my environment and I went. And part of while I was there, I just didn't make any decisions without a pendulum. So I used a pendulum just to make all my decisions for me, to try and drop out of this whole thing, right? So if we overthink things and we're just not following our path and following our heart, right? So I knew I was supposed to be there. So, and I knew suddenly that I was just supposed to make all my decisions with the pendulum. And so, kind of like long story short, I ended up going out to the desert, to this place in the dunes in Colorado where this spirit dream guide told me to go. And I stayed in this house. It was an Airbnb, and I stayed in this house for 3 days, and there was no one there. The owner of the house was gone. All the guests were gone. And I just stayed in this house for 3 days. And the first 2 days, I just meditated and hung out. And I was feeling like some pretty heavy presences in the area and just didn't feel like going out. And then on the third day, this guy who owned the house came back. His name's Wonder Bob.
Wonder Bob.
And he's a self-described mystic, oddly enough. Funnily enough. And he brought me to this Taoist temple, and there was this 600-year-old juniper tree there. And he asked me, he kind of leaned in with his forehead and meditated into the tree and saw with the tree or something. And I'm like watching this happen and kind of thinking, what does he want me to do? Like, what is this? Like, I don't know what's going on really. And he told me to do the same thing after he was done. And so I did. And, he told me to just like, let the tree show me what it was going to show me. And so I dropped down, started meditating, and I have my head, like third eye touching like this cut off branch of this like 600-year-old crazy tree, all these rings. And I had like pretty instantly a vision of like these 3, 4, 5 like small group of monkeys, and they were coming down from the mountains, and they were being very mischievous and weird. And then I thought to myself, no, like this is the monkey mind. This is my mind wandering. This is like an imagination. This is me not taking this seriously. Like, I better get my shit together and like really meditate here. And like this wise man's trying to show me something. And like, I have to take this seriously and like really get the best out of this. And so then I cleared my head again, and I had this lovely vision of the area we were in like 5,000 years earlier, where there was a lake there and it was all nice and it wasn't a desert. Not that the desert isn't nice, it's beautiful. But he asked me to share what I'd seen, and so I shared the part about the lake because I was all up in my head, and I was like, "Oh, that's what he wants to hear." And he asked me if that was it, and I admitted to him that, like, well, at first I actually saw these monkeys, and blah blah blah, and his eyes just like lit up, and he like went back a little bit, and he was like, "See, like," he told me, "Yeah, not to be like afraid to know, just to know, like, what that experience I couldn't connect to. The monkeys didn't mean anything to me, so I thought that they were just some ridiculous image that my mind was just coming up with because I have ADD or something." But
wow,
in reality, they were a huge part of the strange mystical spiritual work that this man had been doing in that area for years, working with these crazy mountain monkey spirits. So that, I think, would be a good explanation of, what's the difference between, your imagination and this mystical experience around us. Is that, like, the truth is the line's very thin, and like once you have enough experience and you learn where the line is, it practically doesn't exist anymore. So again, it's like they're kind of the same,
Yeah. So, yeah, it sounds like you had a really specific vision to go to this very specific place.
Oh, yeah.
And, you had a bit of hesitation to do that. And I feel like all of us have that kind of experience of like a strange feeling of like compelling. Like something is compelling me to like do this thing. Something is compelling me to start a podcast. Something is compelling me to do this and that. And like oftentimes it's really easy to overlook that sort of experience or that thought, that insight that shows up. So I'm wondering, like, if somebody's never had a mystical experience before, if they don't believe in anything, outside of like the physical realm, very like pragmatic, empirical, scientifically minded, needs proof, like if this person wanted to like start opening up to the idea that there is something beyond the veil, they started thinking like, well, what if there is? Like people are talking about having these like incredible experiences, then like I've got someone really specific in mind as I'm saying this, but like that atheistic kind of mindset. Like, how would they go about opening themselves to these kinds of experiences?
So I think first off, we should kind of describe more generally what a mystical experience is.
Yeah.
So I would what I would say.
In like one sentence, like how would you, if someone was like, what's a mystical experience?
Generally speaking, a mystical experience is just something that happens that I don't think the majority of humankind would expect to happen, or that happens very frequently in like a pattern in human nature. And it could be anything from like seeing Christ to seeing UFO, or seeing a vision in a dream and then it happens in reality. It could be talking to gnomes and fairies and communicating with weird garden goblins. It could be receiving messages about important life advice from the flickering of a butterfly like passing by you. It could be so many things. It could be going on a vision quest or attending like an ayahuasca ceremony.
Yeah.
As much as it could be in like our realm of field, having an experience to get inspiration from artistically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
because those are all really good points. Because there are like lots of little like hints and inklings, and I want to circle back to what you were saying before about having like a knowing that something is mystical. And I actually read in a book about remote viewing that the way that you know that you are actually like out of your body and in a real place and bringing back like real data is that there's this certain knowing that comes with it, that you are like certain that you were there and that what you saw was correct, versus like what they also call analytical overlay, which is basically just your brain filling in the gaps of like what you might be seeing. So I had a guided meditation experience where someone came over here and they led me through a guided meditation to go meet my guides and like the extraterrestrials that I'm in contact with, that have like seeded the idea of quantum soup in my brain so that I can like ask them more questions. And I'm like, hell yeah. But I was also like, is this real? And I went through the experience, the guided meditation, and like it was very relaxing, and it was like very imaginative as well. Like a lot of the guided meditation that they were leading me through was asking me to visualize like a bubble of light around me, and then this bubble of light picks me up and like carries me across the universe. And I couldn't help but think, like, before and also after and even during that scenario, I'm like, this is just my imagination. Like, I'm not sure that I'm really going somewhere real. But the places that I went during that guided meditation were they were really incredible. Yeah. They were these it was this like desert city, and it was this land called Mofinik from Quantum Soup that has that's like a really hostile place. It's like super futuristic and high tech, but it's like if Australia were on an alien planet and it was like 100 times more vicious than it is, and everything was like trying to kill you. It's just a fun place for a cartoon. But I knew internally, I was like, oh, I think this is Mofinik, because I've put a lot of thought in my imagination into that particular place. Like, do you think it's possible that I actually like went to that place, or what the construction of it is in my mind? Because I brought back like tangible information. One thing I remember specifically is this really tall tower that was just I literally towered above everything else in the city, and it was very cool architecture. Like it brought me back to when I was a kid, and I had like a very, very active imagination where I was like in my daydreams for 90% of the time, versus now, and I'm gonna be 30 next month. I'm in my imagination like whenever I get free time. So like, could I call that a mystical experience? Because to me, it was kind of imaginary, but it was also through meditation, but it also gave me something tangible to like work with after the experience.
So, I mean, I would definitely call that a mystical experience. And so do I really think that you went there? Yeah, I do. I do. But also that's just me, it's really up to you in your life to do your own knowing.
Yeah.
So I can that. So all I'm gonna offer is my opinion to say, yeah, I think that's very real. But like, I can't know for sure unless I did some tricks or wanted to really badly, that what you experienced for you was real, or if it was something that you were, I don't know, playing on or distracted by. And so the way that we get good at knowing if we're having some sort of mystical encounter, as opposed to just like...
This is so good. Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. The way that we know is through practice. So, but if you want to be confident. So if you want to be confident at anything, then you have to be proficient at it. And if the only way to be proficient with something is to practice that thing like on a very regular basis, and to get to a point of knowing, right? So if let's say, you could say like, I know how to play the piano, right? If you actually know, then you're proficient. You can play, and you can pick up, and you can just write songs and play piano, as opposed to being like, oh, I know how to play piano, maybe kind of, not really. Or I could play it, but I don't, which is like kind of the case for me. But yeah, it's knowing comes from confidence, right? So you have to have the confidence to understand, to have like truth in your experience, right? So if you're just like some sort of weak passive or pushover-y kind of a person, you're not gonna get any momentum. There's not, so it's, this happens in real life too, and we're just like talking to an average that, I don't know, if you wanted to, like dating, like if you have to have confidence, you have to have a knowing that there's a possibility, right? So that's really all it is practice.
So is it like just what we would consider, if we consider it to be mystical, like if we have that knowing that you're saying of like, wow, I really encountered something, like just in the example of my experience where I encountered this personality and then made a painting based off of her, the entity or personality that I met up on these mountains. Do I just like strongly consider that it's a mystical experience because like the nuances of the land were like so specific towards that personality and that like entity that maybe little traces of their energy were left on the land, and like in that state of like being alone and really in tune with my surroundings and nature, I was very like in the moment, just like, wow, look at that, wow, look at that, wow, look at that, wow. And then all of a sudden this voice is like, y'all get around a lot better on a horse. And I was like, who said that? I just kept looking around. I felt something like laughing at me for like hiking in my little human shoes and not on a horse. and that personality like stayed with me throughout the rest of the hike, and like now she's a character in Quantum Soup who I'm super excited to explore within that content. So I guess where I'm getting at is I want to know like how, if someone was like, I really want to have a mystical experience, I've never encountered anything like that before, like I've never interacted with the spirit world or anything, like what would you recommend for them to do to kind of open up to that that experience?
First off, I'd say that them opening the door to wanting to have that experience and just being open to that and receptive to that is the first step to
don't tap on the table,
bringing that up into your life. So if someone wanted to have a mystical experience that maybe they haven't encountered anything like that before, there's like a bunch of ways, so many ways. Maybe like advanced meditation techniques, like visualization meditation techniques, like even like eating well, like following the right situation and vibes. Like, so let's say like someone isn't having any experience like that in their life and they really want to have it. If they're like, hanging out with some like rock hard, boring kind of people, or like, let's just drink and go to bed early and watch TV, it's like you're so distracted. Like it's not how you enter into a world of having mystical experiences. So the interesting thing is in Buddhism, like a mystical experience is just tied in with the rest of life. These are just things that happen on occasion if you go out and live your life. So other good ways to kind of bring that about, we're talking about like knowing and practicing, or I'm like, oh, you just have to practice and have confidence. So it's like, how would you do that? You could, that's what tools are for, right? So things like runes and tarot and pendulums, and even, I guess, in that realm, like prayer beads in a way. It's this practice element. So you're going to it with this idea that it's doing something for you, right? So if you're reading tarot cards, so the cards are giving me answers, right? But if you really look at the cards individually, like to be perfectly honest, they're all extremely vague, right? So you could draw inference from anything in this card. You could connect, or if you're reading a horoscope or something, you could connect a small part of it, right? And then just be more influenced to think it's all right or always right or something, right? But when we use tools like meditation and breathing, a proper diet, like set and setting, surrounding like community. These are all tools, like vehicles towards having and living like this mystical life. So when you read tarot, you practice, right? So you don't know what the cards mean right away. You have to go like look it up and figure it out and practice reading and do readings for people and yourself and like get into it. And the more you do that, and the more you use like divination tools, it's just a great way to get your brain into a state of being aware of the mystical all around us. You practice and you start to read into things, right? So someone who's good at reading tarot, they are using their own experience of reading vibes and reading people and intuiting information and all this in the process. And that's like where you really, you want to pay someone who's good at that, right? You're not just gonna you could just go buy a tarot deck and do it, right? So why do people pay people like this? Is because they have that confidence and that level of expertise and knowledge. And they have this weird sense of knowing. It's like a fortune teller or something. It's like, oh, how did they know that was true? And it really came true. And how did they know, right?
Yeah.
It's they practice a lot. Like no one's going to be good at any of this to begin with, right? And
yeah.
you're just like born as the Buddha or something. And then in which case would you even be born? I don't know. So that's my answer really. And if you apply it into like the realm, I have a lot of experience seeing UFOs. This is like a fun thing to talk about because it's less out of the mind. It's less out of like, I had this vision, is it real? Or I saw this thing in my mind, how do I know?
Yeah.
And more into the realm of that's the other realm of mystical encounters and experiences, these tangible things in our environment that we don't have any doubt about because we experience them with other senses outside of just our mind, which is an illusion because of course our mind is the thing that's processing all our senses to begin with. So I know that's another silly thing, but when you really start to look at stuff like that, then that's when you'll start to figure out more about these like minor things, like what I see in meditation or what I see in dreaming or something, right?
Yeah, so I really want to see a UFO. I really want to see like an authentic extraterrestrial craft that is like making maneuvers and maybe like interacting with me. I've been obsessed with this for so long. I feel like because of that, they are like actively avoiding me, and I can totally understand if there was somebody out there who's like, oh my god, I really hope that I meet Brett Warner's. I really hope that I run into him. I really, really, really hope that like I see him. Then like if they saw me, and then it would be such a strange moment for me because of like their desperation to like want to meet me. And I know that I would probably like consciously avoid them. Like, do you think that's why I haven't had any like substantial sightings or visitings from craft like this?
So I think right off the bat, it's not that you're incapable of it, right? I think you thinking that you're putting up a blockage is a blockage that you're putting up by thinking it, right? So I think it's really it's fairly easy to see a UFO. It requires one thing. You go outside at night or in the afternoon, early morning, even during the day, but things in the sky are harder to see during the day, and you just look at the sky. It's like very simple. You want to see a UFO, they're in the sky, so you have to spend time practicing looking at the sky, and
that's it.
That's it. So you spend enough time looking up at the sky at night, you're gonna see some weird stuff that you can't explain. I think a lot of us have had experiences where you see something that maybe looks like a satellite, and then you go in your mind, you're like, well, maybe it was a satellite, I don't know. And so you have this doubt, you don't have this knowing, right? But if you spend enough time looking at the sky, you're gonna see something you're gonna see them. Like, they're out there. Like, I've seen a lot. I've shown other people them. I've had this exact discussion with people, and then they go off and they're like, you know what, like, it's so weird, I saw a UFO like 3 days after we talked about this. And it's pretty simple. I think someone asked me this exact same question one time, and I asked them, I was like, well how much do you want to see it, but you're not seeing it? It's like, well, how much do you go outside at 3 a.m. and stand outside for 2 hours and just look at the sky and don't do anything else? Don't look at your phone, just like look at the sky, look around and try and see one. And usually the answer is like, never. I've never done that. And I'm like, oh, well, that's probably why you've never seen one. So that's definitely my answer for you. You guys want to see a UFO? Like, go look at the sky. That's where they are. you could see one in your mind. You could see them, I don't know, on DMT or something. But like, you want to be sure, and you just go look at the sky at night. They're real. They're out there.
Yeah, I also want to just add to that looking at the sky at night is really relaxing. For me, it's something I do like almost every night before I go to bed. I just stand on the porch right here outside the studio, and I'll just stare up at the sky. And like the fact that we are seeing light from stars that are literally billions of miles away is just fascinating. Like it's impossible to know like how much space is actually between us and this little light source that is some unfathomable distance away, and that stars that we see that are like right next to each other can actually be like absurd distances apart. Like, just a little side note that's really cool, and I recommend for everybody to do that at every opportunity that they can.
Go look at the stars. They're amazing. You want to see UFO? You want to see star people? They're in the sky.
I want to see some star people. Give me your generators so I can power my house with 0-point electricity. Get me off of the grid, but I don't want to move.
They're like, no, we don't want you guys in space too. You fucking weird monkeys. Get out of here. Stay on your rock in the void planet Earth.
You're still building nuclear weapons. Like, you stay down there until you stop building weapons and being silly with your little wars, and you're fighting each other, and my politicians don't like your politicians. Here's a missile. They're like, oh, you sent me a missile. Like, we don't have a military. I'm going to talk to the UN. That is such a terrible dramatization of what happens in the UN. I have no idea. I don't really pay that much attention to politics. I try and watch enough that I know what's going on. But yeah, I've heard Stephen Greer talk about that a lot. That like because we are still manufacturing weapons and creating these, we're still living in a military industrial complex. Whether we support it or not, our tax money goes to it. That's the reason that they haven't actually made themselves physically known. But what excites me is that by using tools such as meditation, we can lift our consciousness up to them and we can visit them. So I guess I'm also curious how we can do that. Like if I meditate and, project my consciousness far up into space, like, and I meet some kind of entity, like, will I have that knowing that it's a real entity, or is it just my brain, like, sending me characters from my own cartoon being like, here, have a conversation, which I have had conversations with characters from my cartoon. I had a really interesting one with Fea while I was in the forest, and that was a very profound conversation, but it was still coming from like my own imagination, and I was very much aware of that. But at the same time, I feel like there's some kind of spirit that we tap into, like especially if we're experiencing the same characters or the same entities on a really regular basis. then it's almost like that is a real spirit, even if it's someone or something that we've just completely made up. So like, are we actually generating our own like spirits and our own guides, like as we're, you know, working through these mystical realms of deep meditation and astral projection?
So are you generating them, or are you tapping into something that's already there, right? So it's another both answer. Unfortunately, very fortunately, yeah. what we experience, what we think, tangibly becomes a part of our reality instantaneously through chemical reactions in the brain. Like when you have a thought, it creates a chemical response that gets delivered to your system. That's an instant manifestation. That's thought turning into reality. It's building, it's changing your body, and it's instantaneous, and it's tangible, and it's measurable. So you go from something like maybe a little more basic or scientific like that into a vast scenescape or something, right? So you're talking a lot about like visions from your show and having gotten an experience and seen things through meditation or visualization, or you're just out in the woods and boom, it comes to you. Yeah, is that something you're tapping into, or is that something you're creating? I think that through stimulation, like external stimulation, it is something you're tapping into. But then once it enters your mind, it what's happening there is that you creating a reality. And yeah, I think the answer is like rather obvious if you just like take just a second and like sit back and like calm and like think about it. It's pretty obvious. Yes, that has happened. You started to create this show. You've seen these places. Now you're creating them. They've become like a real thing that is recorded and documented and measurable and is real and knowable at that point, right? So who knows where that could go, right? Technology is advancing so fast. You could have like a quantum soup theme park or something. How real is that? Is that real? Like, and then someone could come there and they take acid and go to your theme park and they have a mystical encounter and then they make a show out of it or something. It's like, this doesn't stop. Like, this is constantly happening. And yeah, it's real. That's
like low-key a goal of mine with the show. I want to inspire other people to think within those realms and like understand that imagination is ultimately limitless. Like, so, bro, are we all etherical? Are all of us like intrinsically tied to this mystical realm as our soul is flopping around in this physical body? Like, are all of us attached to this like grand, ethereal, intangible, impossible to describe entity or collective?
I would say we're disattached, right? Are we attached to it? I don't know. We're disattached. We're tricking ourselves in this human form. This is a temporary existence in a permanent and ever expanding and like reality. Does time and space end ever?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. It's hard to even tell. And if you enter in like, wormhole theories and quantum theories about time, I think it becomes pretty obvious pretty rapidly that, time is not linear. And see, that's another thing, right? So these are things that are well studied in theoretical physics that, do we really apply them to our life? Like, time is not linear. There's at least, 16 mathematically proven dimensions. So things like that. So these are things that are theory, and they're entering in rather quickly into being scientifically provable facts.
Wow. Right? So what I'm kind of pulling from this is that if we believe we are intrinsically tied in with this etherical spirit world, then we are. But if we choose not to believe in it, then we're disconnected from it.
Yeah, basically that's it. And so this is where the whole ignorance is bliss thing, right? So once you know something, it changes the reality and how you respond. Like now you have to respond as if it's real. But did that mean that it wasn't real before you noticed it? No, it was still just as real, but it wasn't real to you, right? So this is really the juice of, as you reach for your vape juice. This is the juice of what it means to have a mystical experience, right? So is it real? It is real. We're all tied in.
If we're having a imaginary experience that we remember and that we pull something from that sticks with us, then I think we can remember it as if it's a very real experience. Like back to my guided meditation where I went to this desert world. I remember that. Most of that experience that I had during meditation. And so in a sense, it's kind of real to me because it's real in my memories. It's as real in my memories as moving into this house a year ago. So in a sense, like that kind of makes it like a real thing.
Yeah, right. So again, like there's these two realms, there's these thoughts and ideas that are hard to separate from ourselves because we're the ones having them. And then there are these things happening in our external environments, which we're absolutely sure are real. But think about how hallucinations work, right? That kind of blends the line there when you take a hallucinatory substance, or let's say you have a psychiatric breakdown and you're experiencing hallucinations. You can't tell. Is it really there or is it not? So it's just a freaky thing. So yeah, we are all etheric. We are all experiencing. We all live in this dimension, in this place on Earth right now at this time, where there are people out there and they're having these encounters and they're living a mystic life. And it's been that way for a very long time in human history now, maybe forever.
Yeah.
And there's always been, I guess, the majority of people, like at least now on Earth right now, that maybe are doubting or they don't understand how it could be scientifically proven, or they simply just haven't actually tried or done enough research, whether or not they want to like prove that this is a thing or not, and they haven't really done enough research into like actual, theoretical science and quantum mechanics, or they want to have the experience and they're open to it and they believe it's real and it's not happening. It's like, well, you're just not practicing. But then there is this added third element of manifestation, which is, what you brought up, right? Is there a block or is there not a block? Well, yeah, there can be a block, and the block doesn't come from whether or not you think there is one or isn't one. It comes from thinking, like being attached to the idea, right? So what we tend to do is we tend to kind of like block ourselves from having experiences, and this can go way outside of the realm of physical experiences. This could be simple stuff, I was going to give an example about like owning a pet, but that's like a silly example. I don't want to give that one. Like again, I guess like relationships is something everyone can relate to. So, and it's something that a lot of people want, and they think they try and get, right. So how many times have like we all heard that you have to like give up or like stop trying to like have something happen? And
yeah.
How weird it is that a lot of the times that's true.
Yeah, and that's a good transition point towards coming up with ideas that are like inspired from these mystical experiences. I want to shift it over into artwork a little bit, and your art. And the art that you have been blowing my mind with lately is your DJ skills and your music production. Like just even in the last year that you've been here, your skills have leveled up so tremendously. Your SoundCloud is one of the ones that I go to on a regular basis because there's such a diverse selection of mixes there, from like super intense dark psytrance, like high tech, to really chill house music, like Euro vibey kind of stuff. And you've played sets here for our circles and for our events, and even brought your entire setup to Carrier Park, which is so cool. I would love to see more of that happen.
It's starting to get warm.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, how your mystical experiences, or, you know, at least your connection, like, to some kind of etherical world, how that's affected your music mixing and your music production, and also your digital artwork, which has been floating behind us throughout this entire podcast.
So, man, I would start answering the question by talking about the digital art, because it kind of like came first, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
I've been practicing and playing music like my whole life in one form or another on a very consistent basis. But I never wanted to pursue it as, a serious or professional kind of thing, because it just was like more of a hobby to me, right? So it was about 4 years ago, I think, that I was still just having like a terrible time where I was like really close and been like practicing in an ashram and stuff, and I had a really good understanding of things, but I was still experiencing a lot of anger and depression in my life, and I understood, you know, where it was probably coming from, and I certainly understood all the tools to use to help with that, but I was still experiencing it, right? And so I'd say at that point, you know, I was still, my main thing was doing visionary graphic design, and I was still like cranking out a lot. I was actually cranking out a lot of work then. And at some point, I kind of realized that I just needed a break from all the things. I had like a series of unfortunate social events at my workplace at the ashram, like caused me to leave, and that was a really healthy situation for me, and it was a good and well-paying and respected job, doing something that I really enjoyed doing, and that's easy for me. So yeah, becoming unemployed and still experiencing all these emotional reactions to something like that really upset me. And so I took a break from doing digital art, which is like turned into this like weirdly long, like 4-year kind of like, I still work on digital art like every week, but it's turned into this new experience with DJing and now producing music, and now like DJing and starting to DJ on like a professional level and getting paid for these things. And that it made sense. It's where it was going all the whole time, but I just would never really imagine that I'd be doing this in my life. And it happened because I was like upset still. So I decided to just do things that I hadn't done, been putting off doing. And part of that was also to do things practice more and do more things that brought me joy. And music has always been a huge source of joy for me, and it's just like endlessly fascinating, right? I mean, how many of us listen to music when we work on art? It's like all of us, I think.
Yeah, so how'd you get so good at DJing like so quickly? Or was there a period of time where you were practicing constantly and like nobody ever heard you?
Yeah, there was a period of time where I was practicing constantly and no one heard me. Yeah. What happened is I went and I was kind of like talking about these things at our friend Drew's house, actually, in Massachusetts. And
yeah,
I think I casually mentioned that I'd be interested in like DJing. Sounds fun. And, you know, we go to events, we see people do it. It's probably really easy. They look like they're having a good time and they get paid for it.
Can't be that hard.
Can't be that bad. It's just music and it sounds good. So, and he told me he had a DJ mixer that he didn't use, and he would just let me take for like half a year. So I took it, and then I found this like all sorts of freeware for DJing, and I just started doing it, and I was like, oh, I like my music, so this is all right. I think I went and tried to play this small thing without professional software, and it was just like terrible. It was like me selecting things on my computer, and like, it was really bad. But yeah, it's practice again. Like,
you got to start somewhere.
Daily practice too. And so I lived in a year during this whole time of my life in New Hampshire, and it was pretty much off grid entirely, except for I ran an electrical cord in there so I could have music. And I'm in there and I'm taking a break from digital work, and I have this mixer, and I just started playing music because it's fun. And yeah, now here I am, like getting offered gigs left and right and playing for crowds of people and like getting amazing feedback and getting paid to do something, which I think is like so fun and so easy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it happened. Yeah, there were years, and it still happens all the time, where I practice and no one hears. I have, even like now, I'll go home and I'll play for like an hour or two, or 8 straight hours without drinking any water or like getting up and trying to get better. But also, it's just like, you know, when you do things that we have fun doing, you know, I love graphic design, but I something I realized about it at some point was along the lines of like me still dealing with emotional issues, was that it was kind of triggering for my emotional issues, and I would have a lot of frustration. Graphic design is pretty frustrating sometimes.
It can be. Yeah. It's not easy. No, it looks really easy because like good designers make it look easy, but what you don't see behind those good designs is like the countless iterations that they went through to get to that state where like something is really simple and it's just a bare minimum. Like my logo is a great example of this, and it's on my water bottle. I'm holding it up to the camera. This looks nothing like the first logo that I designed for myself, the first logo that I made for myself. It was actually like an esoteric symbol when I started designing this logo, but then that was like completely irrelevant to everybody except me, so I had to change it to a Wacom tablet pen, which was a much wiser choice. But it took all of those iterations to like get to that choice and to get to that particular design. And like from what I've seen with you, it looks like you're really loving making and playing music right now.
I mean, it's producing music is pretty comparable to graphic design, though I don't get as frustrated. Probably because I don't know the software as well, so I'm like, it's okay. I'm a novice or something. So you know, but it's equally as difficult. And man, damn, did you compliment me and I didn't say thank you? Thank you. And
you're used to it.
I think that the thing is, though, like with music, it's something that just brings me like endless joy. So, you know, when I first started doing this, and still like now, thinking back upon, you know, what should I be doing with my life? Well, like, what did I have fun doing? And my first answer to that was dancing at festivals. And I was like, well, why was that fun? Like, is it the dance? I'm like, I'm not really a great dancer. I love dancing, but what's driving that dance is the music. And like, that's really what I love and appreciate. Is, going to see live music is so much fun. And you pick something like that that's like makes you happy, that like you've experienced joy in, and then everything's just practice. That's how you get to your state of knowing and confidence. So.
Yeah. And yeah, just to add to that, I feel like once you get into a really good state of flow with something, then that's where like the magical happy accidents start to happen, and these results will suddenly appear before your eyes that you're not really anticipating or like maybe even doing intentionally, but then you replay it, or you like step back or zoom out, or something. You look at it and you're like, oh, wait a minute, there's like really something here that I didn't see before. And it's almost like the machine spirits or some other entity is like they're just rearranging things a little bit, just enough that it creates something completely new and something that you didn't have the idea for it before. But then those having that space and just the gusto to dive into something, to dive into some process and just start learning things with it, that's what really opens up those opportunities for those really magical things to happen.
Right. So do things that you enjoy doing, right? So open the door to go back, look at things that you've been putting off, or especially if they're things that make you happy and have very low risk. Why are you not doing them? And when you go and then you start to do those things, you're living in the moment. You're bringing appreciation and all of yourself into what you're doing. This is the exact same advice for having like a mystical experience, right? So you want that to happen? You think it's going to bring you joy or something? Or it's fascinating to you? Why are you not practicing it? It's simply practice.
Yeah.
You can have the intention. A lot of us think about things all the time that we enjoy doing, but if you don't engage in doing them, you're not really going to have an experience, and you're certainly never going to get to a state where you have confidence in knowing, right? So
I think that's also a really good bullet point for like how to have a mystical experience is to just get into a flow state of something that you really like doing. Because I know when I'm really into a painting, I am swimming in my own little world as I'm doing that. Nothing outside of the painting really matters, and I'm just experimenting with brushes and seeing what comes of it. And that's kind of when little ideas will start to like show up or make themselves known. The place where I feel I'm actually most receptive to those experiences, and something I do intentionally every week, is go out into nature and just be surrounded with a location that I'm not really familiar with, and having no reference point to anything in my life sort of helps me get into that mind state of being receptive to other energies or other little quirks or nuances of the world that can install these ideas into me and create that receptivity and that openness that we're talking about, that it requires to have a mystical experience in the first place.
Right. Yeah. If that's exactly right. And if you can have a mystical experience anywhere. Like we talked a lot about like mind stuff. UFOs, they're in the sky. The sky is everywhere. You can't avoid it. So it's gonna happen. But if you let's say you go out in nature and you're dowdy, or you're overthinking, or you're attached to the idea, I'm gonna go out every day until I see this UFOs. It's definitely gonna happen. This has to happen. This is what this dude on the internet said. He said, just go look at the sky every day. I think it's gonna happen. Then you're ever thinking like, go look at the sky because the sky's nice. It's fun. It's a good experience.
I am guilty of going into the forest and having expectations of something really magical and enchanting happening to me, and those expectations get built because it's happened to me in the past.
Yeah.
But when I go out there with that expectation, it never happens. Yeah, I get back to the car and I'm like, I didn't do it right, I don't think. And it's completely internal. It's completely about the mind state. And surrendering to the flow of the moment that allows these new ideas and these new insights, or even these new entities and personalities to enter your stream of consciousness and kind of have a say in what your thought process is like throughout the day.
Sure, sharing mind space.
Yeah.
So that reminds me of something that I like to kind of like guide people through, which is finding crystals. So let's say, you can pay to go to a mine and find crystals, right? Because they're there, and obviously it's a mine. That's what's happening. So, but like, let's say you want to have a more mystical crystal experience where you just like happen upon these things in the woods, and they're just like, oh, it just came up, and oh, look at that, synchronicity is weird. And so I go rock climbing a lot. I love minerals. I love to go find crystals. It's like a major hobby. Again, it's something that just brings me joy. Going out in nature and being really grounded and hyper focused on like small things on the ground and like rolling around in the dirt and like not having expectations, just like being in the environment and being observant and like grateful for it is a huge thing. Having like being grateful and being happy are like a huge part of this. And so I go out at this like little brook at this farm I used to work on and find crystals. And I don't know, I think I just like found one in the field, the farm field one day, and I was like, well, if they're in the field, like they're probably in the river, and the river's already done a lot of the hard work, so it's like easier than digging the dirt, and it's hot, so I'm gonna go like cool off and look maybe if the crystals in the river. And I found some like nice quartz, like really nice quartz points. And so then after that, I went, to go out on a more regular basis and practice doing that. And I would have these days where I would plan where I was going to go, and I would, load up. I had like little pouches with like herbs and crystals, like I'd get my vibrate and like wear like fancy cool, I don't know, like burner shit in the woods, and like be like, I don't know, do something like, and like intentionally like take medicine and like go out there and like, this is the crystal that I'm going to spend all day and I'm going to find crystals. And most of the time, you don't find anything like that. And I kind of realized that there'd be other days, though, where I'll just be chilling or maybe doing something else entirely. And then, like, the river would just, like, come up in my mind. And, like, it would just, like, feel like it just, like, came in the nether and was like, hey, there's a crystal here today. This is generally where it is. It's just there. It's like, you could go get it if you want.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is now. And, rush out, not plan anything, not take medicine, not like wear like ceremony clothes, not like paint my face, not like have satchels and shit on me. Just go right out and be like, oh, okay, well, the river told me now, so I go now. And just have no doubts about it. See, this confidence, right? And then I've always found something pretty remarkable when that happens.
Wow. Yeah, so I guess it's... So, to add to the list of bullet points for how to have a mystical experience, just being open and receptive and enjoying the moment. Like you said, you were going there to this brook to cool off and just kind of relax a little bit, like after working on the farm. And it sounds like, just being in that little state kind of allows that space for the voices to show up and say, hey, Kyle,
yeah,
look over here. Look over here. Look over here. There's gonna be a crystal. Oh shit, look at that. I found it. Ah, look at all my crystals everywhere. Look, I found them. So we are starting to approach the end of this podcast because you said you had to go at a specific time. Yeah. So there's one more question that I want to ask you. Do you want to make a bunch of weird noises with me?
Yes.
I think we just had a collective mystical experience.
I hope so. I did. I know about that.
That was actually probably the most magical thing that's happened to me today. Thank you for being part of that.
You're welcome. Okay.
So to wrap things up, in order to have a mystical experience, believing that there's something there seems like it's the right direction to go in order to create these encounters or these experiences that, give us profound life changes. And I think just enjoying the flow of things is really like the best way. And that's something we can do no matter where we are, is just choose to enjoy ourselves in that moment with whatever it is that we are doing. Does that all ring as true to you?
Yeah, just be open. First off, open to the experience. Set an intention to have an experience, right?
Yeah.
Don't grasp to that intention. You set an intention, you're like, oh, this is going to happen at some point. It's just going to happen. I know it. And then let it go and go about, follow your intuition. Go out to that river, go climb that mountain that feels like right. It's what you want to do today. It's what's going to make you happy, and go and appreciate being there. And you never know, like some weird things are going to happen when you're in the moment and you're open to it and you've set that intention. It's just going to happen eventually if you can just figure out your monkey mind way through not blocking yourself by overthinking. Just go enjoy life.
I love that. Yes, setting intentions. I can't believe I didn't mention that, because that's something that I do anytime that I go out into nature on a vision quest or just to explore myself. Is I'll think of something like, I really hope that the podcast episode I record tomorrow is going to go well, or that I'm in as clear a mind state as possible. Mm-hmm. I really love that you added that, because I think that's a really essential part of being open to these kinds of experiences and understanding a little bit about what is here and all around us that we can't see all the time.
An infinite quantum entanglement of various and multiplied possibilities that's ever changing. So
Kyle,
just think anything of it's real. It's real.
It's real. It's there.
It's all real. It's all real.
Kyle, where can our viewers connect with you?
You can connect with me on Facebook at Kyle Spann-Weitz. It's KYLESPANNWEITZ. I also have another page on there that's more for art. That's The Art of Kyle Spann-Weitz. I'm on Instagram at ElyKyle, which is my name I go by, my artist name. It's ELYKYLE. It's just a mirror of my first name. And I'm on SoundCloud under the same names. If you search Kyle Spann-Weitz or ElyKyle on Facebook, Instagram, or SoundCloud, I'm there.
Definitely go to Kyle's SoundCloud, because it is absolutely smashing. If you are into psychedelic music or music in general, then you will be blown away by his mixing style and by his track selection, because it's unlike anything I've ever heard. When I start one of his mixes, I will listen to it the entire way through because it is just that good. It's that juicy. It stays interesting throughout it. Sometimes DJs will let a track go a little too long. Kyle does not do that. I promise you. Listen to ElyKyle on SoundCloud and you will be very satisfied.
Go to my SoundCloud. There's all sorts of shit there. It's going to be great.
Yes.
Like any electronic music, bass music, whatever, it's all there. I've got everything.
Kyle, is there anything else you'd like to say to the visionary art community?
I love you guys. Be well. Be blessed. Open yourselves to these mystical encounters. It's going to influence not just your art, but your entire life. And like, if you want it and it's part of your realm of possibilities, why not have this experience? Go do it.
It's true. Listen to this guy. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. All of the links mentioned will be down there in the description. Thank you so much. Kyle, I love you. Thank you so much for being here and being part of the second ever recorded Visionary Art Podcast. And thank you for going through the drama of getting everything hooked up before this. I'm so glad that we got it working, and I'm so glad that we have been going for almost an hour and a half now recording this. This has been a blast.
Anytime you want me to talk more, I'll just talk. I can just keep talking. Let's do this podcast. Let's make this shit happen.
There will definitely be more. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good morning. Have a good afternoon. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.